after you've figured this out, you got to talk with your upline and come up with a game plan for what is going to work for you. Some agents, go out and buy leads. Some agents will convert their final expense clients to Medicare sales. Some agents will, go out and do grassroots marketing. That's one of the things that we recommend to agents, and it works. And that's why we recommend it. And we've seen, tons of agents become very successful.
Share it with anybody who you're in conversation with and is wanting to get into the business. Cause sometimes we only go through this onboarding process once, right? And we could tend to forget about it, especially if you've been doing this for years. Question comes up, where do I go to do this? Like, gosh, I don't remember exactly what that was. So you could just share this podcast and say, go listen to this.
Right.
And they kind of break down what the steps are in terms of getting the ball rolling and being able to get out there and write some Medicare business.
And the idea is that you're going to develop your book, your practice, or whatever you choose to call it. You're going to develop it into an actual business. And so you've got to run it that way. But one of the big parts is you have to understand that there is going to be some investment, and that's part of it. Hopefully your upline is providing you with training or helping you to get in front of people, but ultimately it falls back on you because it's your business. Everyone's here to help you, including the carriers. But it really comes back to you, and you're going to get back from it what you put into it. Everybody, welcome back to Medicare Agent IQ. I am Raul Gonzalez.
And I'm Oscar Ibieta.
And so today we're just, the other day, I've seen a couple of people message or reach out and say, hey, I want to start doing Medicare. And I think, right now, obviously a lot of people decide I want to jump in as we get closer to AEP. So we decided to put this podcast together, and it's going to be basically how kind of a step-by-step guide for new agents on getting contracts. So obviously if you are already a Medicare agent, you probably listen to this and you're like, well, I already do this, so I guess this one's not for me. But the reason that we're doing it on the regular podcast is because I want to encourage you to listen to it and then send it out to someone that has mentioned that they're interested in selling Medicare. So that way we can, you can comfortably pass on that information.
So. Yeah, you'd be able to share it with anybody who you're in conversation with and is wanting to get into the business. Because sometimes we only go through this onboarding process once, right? And we could tend to forget about it, especially if you've been doing this for years. Question comes up, where do I go to do this? Like, gosh, I don't remember exactly what that was. So you could just share this podcast and say, go listen to this.
Right.
And they kind of break down what the steps are in terms of getting the ball rolling and being able to get out there and write some Medicare business.
Yeah. So step one, we got to make sure we have the right license, right? And so for most states, it's the life and health insurance producer license. And so that's going to be the first step in anything that you do, is just to make sure that you've got that right.
Yeah. The common question that we get, or that I see quite a bit, is I've got my life license. Can I get contracted? Can I start the process to do Medicare with this license? So that is, and what I mean by that, they've got a life only license, meaning It might be an agent who is writing life insurance business, but they don't have their life and health license. They've got their life only license. So the follow-up question, so my answer is no, you've got to have your life and health license. So the follow-up question that I get to that is, can I just add the health portion to this license? Is there an exam that I can go and take just to add the health part? And the answer is no, there isn't. You've got to go and take a separate exam for the life and health license. You can't just add. It's not like a supplemental piece that you can add to your life only license.
Right. Okay. So after that, after you've made sure that you have the correct license, and what we want to make sure to do is choose the right FMO. So we actually have I think I created on YouTube a video about choosing the right FMO. So we're not going to like spend 10 minutes talking about this, but I do want to. I think we do need to talk a little bit about it and some things to consider when choosing an FMO. One of the things that you want to consider when choosing an FMO is the kind of business that you plan on doing. Right. So. What I so I'll backtrack for a minute and say, if you go online and kind of read in the groups and the forums, there's a lot of people who, or there's a select kind of vocal people that will say FMOs just collect money, and it's just not true. FMOs do so much if you pick the right one. And so we want to encourage people to shop and don't just go with the first person that says, hey, I can sign you up. You want to make sure that you're going to get something out of it. And so the really good FMOs will make sure that they put something in writing, like this is how we support our agents. And so like you'll see there's agencies out there that will say, hey, look, if you do such and such amount of sales in a month, you're going to get this many marketing dollars. And so the thing that I like about that is it's tangible. That it's this is something that's real, that we can actually talk about. Whereas people will just say, no, we're going to support you, don't worry about it. That's how you know that maybe, that's not the right organization for you.
Yeah.
And,
there's a couple of routes that people can go when you're choosing an FMO. So one route is if you're going to be independent, right? If you're going to be an independent agent, that's the route where you are an entrepreneur. This is your business, you own it. And then the other route that we may see some people go is what's called an LOA. So that is where either it's a salaried position or there's some sort of trade-off there where maybe you're a captive agent or you're working directly for that company. You'd be an employee for that FMO. So those are a couple of different options that you have when it comes to selecting or choosing an FMO. But at the end of the day, it's a partnership. And so you're looking to find the right partner. Who is it that I want to partner with in terms of helping me build my business? And so you go and you want to, I would suggest, maybe interviewing multiple FMOs and seeing what kind of support it is that they may offer to you. And then you can gather that information, kind of take it in and then decide, okay, I think this is the right partner for me based on what my game plan is or what my business plan is.
Yeah. And let's make a distinction real quick. So there are national FMOs, and these are the big dogs. These are the Gordon Marketing. I'm throwing out names. No, we're not actually connected with them at all, but Gordon Marketing, there's, Senior Market Sales, the brokerage is a big Nash Copeland. I'm thinking ones that are, more present here in Texas, but, Ritter. And so I hate to leave anyone out. I'm not mentioning Amerigroup or Integrity because they're the ones who are seem to buy them, but basically, those are the national FMOs. And so a few years back, United Healthcare changed the way that they hand out the hierarchies and the contracts. And so they started calling these kind of smaller level agencies FMOs. And so the distinction is there's these huge national FMOs that usually have this national footprint. And then there's smaller ones that still probably will go by the name FMO, but they are more regional. And so in the past, it might've been called like a SGA or something like that. In some contracts, they still call it that. But kind of think more regional, where it's not like a small agency where they have 20 or 30 agents. Typically, they're going to be, 200, 300 agents, kind of like, our agency, the kind of size that we have, and that's more regional. So, depending on where you're at. So we're in Texas, which kind of covers the geographical footprint of several states. If you were in another area, primarily we're in Texas, but there are some that will cover like 4 or 5 states. And so kind of think of more regional FMO. And then you have the MGA contract, which is going to be a little smaller, less of a big footprint. And then the GA level, which is kind of that first level that you can get to. And when you're at that GA level, you're hopefully getting more one-on-one support. And so could makes sense to have multiple lines in your hierarchy instead of going direct to one of those national FMOs. So a lot of times you're going to still end up going, with those national FMOs. And so I think that a lot of times that's where sometimes these FMOs will get a bad rap. They said that FMO doesn't do anything for me. Yeah, but they're doing something for the SGA or the FMO below you that's supporting you. And so people because they're not actually seeing that support, right there in their face. But those are typically the ones that are paying for the online enrollment tools and things like that. So kind of went on a soapbox there, but it's important to kind of make that distinction between all the different hierarchy levels, and to tell you that what we would recommend, just being in this business as long as we have, is not going, unless you're like, maybe if you're super experienced and you've been doing this a long time, there's probably, it would make sense to go direct to a national FMO. But if I were in a new agent shoes, what I would do is connect with a smaller agency, whether it be one like I'm talking about that's more regional, that has several hundred agents, or an MGA, or even connecting with a GA, and just making sure that they're going to provide something to you. As a new agent, the most important thing, what I would be looking for, is going to be training.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I agree. And I want to jump in here. You said a lot of things here, and I kind of want to just break some of that.
Talk a lot.
No, that's all right. But I want to break some of those things down. So first and foremost, you mentioned if you're somebody with a lot of experience, maybe you do go with one of those nationals. But if you're a newer agent, then you might want to find, a GA or an MGA. But even if you're somewhere in between, I think there's still value in possibly looking to partner with a more regional FMO, because you can probably get a lot more support in that sense. And to echo what you said, those national FMOs, they're giving that support to those regional FMOs and to the levels that exist underneath them. And so you personally, if I'm looking to find an FMO, I'm going to find one of those more regional ones where I know that I'm going to have a little bit more of a hands-on experience, some more one-on-one interaction, than if I go directly to a national FMO. I'm probably not going to get that kind of experience that I'm looking for. And one other question that might come to mind if you're listening is, well, what's the difference? Does it mess with my compensation? Does it mess with my commissions? If I choose, would I make more money if I go to this national FMO versus, partnering with a GA or an MGA? If you're an independent agent, again, depending on how the commissions are going to be paid out through the FMO, but I think most FMOs out there pay you the highest amount that you can receive per CMS, what Medicare allows. And so you wouldn't make any less money if you choose, well, all these levels exist between me and that national. So does that mean that I'm going to be making less of a commission? The answer is usually no. You're going to be making the same amount on your commissions that you would if you went straight to one of those big national ones.
Right. Yeah. They're not taking anything from you, and usually they're just adding value for you. So if you are, again, this is for new agents. If you are a new agent, there's so much that you really need when you're brand new. You're going to need marketing support. You're going to need strategy. You're going to need, hopefully, obviously, again, like we said, the biggest one is training. And I think that's going to be the most important part. If you are a new agent, making sure that you have someone that will train you on all the specifics of these plans. I see way too often, in some of those groups and forums, where agents will ask the most basic question. I saw one the other day that said, "Hey, if you have a Medicare supplement, how do we know which doctors people can go to?" And I was like, "Oh my goodness!" Like, there has to be, if you're going to be new in this business, if you're going to start selling this, you have a responsibility to get educated, and hopefully your agency's responsibility, and they take that responsibility on themselves to make sure that you're educated, but it ultimately falls on you. You've got to know what you're doing if you're in this business. So we would encourage you to find an agency that is big on training, especially when you're brand new.
Yeah, when I talk to new agents, depending on what world they're coming from, but some I know, like in the life insurance industries, you can get a license and you can pretty much jump in the water and figure it out.
Right.
You got to get out there, and I think that with Medicare, you can't do that.
Right.
We're dealing with people's livelihoods here, and they're making these healthcare decisions on a daily basis. We've got to be able to give them the right guidance, and how can we do that? It's by getting the proper training. And so this picture that I always paint for newer agents is I say, look, you're getting into this business and you want to build this big, beautiful home, and you're going to build this home brick by brick. But in order for this beautiful home that you're going to build to be there for a very long time, you've got to have a strong foundation. You've got to be able to pour a good, solid foundation. And when I say foundation, I'm referring to the training. You've got to have the training in order to get out there and start building that home brick by brick. And that's a tough thing for people to. It can be a challenge for some people to understand or to comprehend, because they're thinking, well, I got to get out there and I got to try and figure out how to start making money. It's like, well, you can get out there and start making money once we get once the foundation is poured, but we got to pour the foundation.
Right. Yeah. And like you said, I mean, and I think it comes from a different world also. So I know that in the final expense world, a lot of times they just tell them, just jump out there, just, like throw them in the pool. They're going to learn how to swim. So, it's sink or swim, right? And so I think that in the final expense world, you can do that because it's very basic. It's very easy. So we see that come over. And so a lot of times what we see is that someone with a big final expense team will move in and they'll start their agency, right? They'll start a Medicare agency, and they're wanting to increase that. And so what ends up happening though is they use that same mentality. They're like, just get in there, just go out there and make those sales, and they'll give them some books and say, make it happen. But there's just too much in Medicare. You have to make sure that you learn. So let's move on from there.
So real quick, before we move on.
Yep.
So if you are that agency and you're looking to do that, just make sure that you choose the right FMO that's going to help you give that support to your team.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, oh, that's a great point. So like if you are that final expense agency or whatever other agency, and you decide to start doing Medicare, make sure that you get it connected with someone who's going to teach you how to teach your agents and teach you how to be a leader in this business. Yep. So absolutely. So next step after you've chosen the right FMO would be you got to get E&O insurance. And so it's very basic, very simple, but it's something that is required. So you will see every once in a while that some of these FMOs do offer kind of like a blanketed E&O. I just saw your note there. Blanketed E&O. But what I would encourage you to do is to shop around. There's some that will reimburse it if you make a certain amount of sales, but it's something that's usually not super expensive if you get it. So a lot of the national FMOs do have kind of a partner company that they work with to help bring those costs down. So it's not something that I would be like, oh, it's going to make or break my decision. If I'm getting all this training and all this support from this FMO, but I've got to pay for my own E&O, I'm probably going to pay the $400 for my E&O and go with this one that gives all this training and all this support.
Yeah, it's a necessity. It's something that you need. And when we say E&O, for those, if that's a term you're not familiar with, E&O, errors and omissions. And so really it's liability insurance on yourself. Kind of like when you get a car, you've got to insure the car if something were to happen. It's the same when you've got your license and you're going to be doing Medicare business. You've got to have E&O. It's getting an insurance policy on yourself. That's the short and sweet, description of it.
Yep, absolutely. Hey, so what's next after getting E&O?
Got to start on the contracts and the certifications. And so that starts with your AHIP, right? And that is kind of your Medicare 101 is what that is. So a lot of times when we explain this process to people, we say, okay, we got to get the AHIP going. Okay. And the question we get is there anything that I can study or that I can look at while I get ready to start on my AHIP? Is there any study material that I can look over or look through? The answer to that is the AHIP is your study material. It is the material that you need to become familiar with the different moving parts of Medicare. It's really, and then you've got to take this exam at the end, and it's a whole bunch of scenarios that you're going to run into, that you're going to see when you're out in the field or when you're out making sales. You've got to be able to know how to work through a lot of these different scenarios. So that's what the AHIP is gonna do for you. There's 5 sections to it, and it's a little bit of a lengthy course. It's very thorough, but I will tell you, it is very valuable as well.
Yeah, yeah, you've got to know the stuff in there, and again, we see too many people that don't. It's like, man, you gotta know the basics in order to do it. So, but the great part about AHIP is that most of the carriers will give you credit, and you won't have to go through their whole certification if you complete the AHIP certification. Mm-hmm. So,
and some will give a discount. You know, if you go through one of the carriers, they'll discount.
You know what? Let's mention that. So, like, if you're going to contract with Humana, you'll get a $50 discount on AHIP. I think that does United still give that discount?
I know WellCare does. I know there are some carriers, and again, that's where you get with your FMO, and you say, hey, which carrier should I go through to access the AHIP so that I can get the discounted rate?
I would recommend start with Humana, because I know that they do, and they're second largest MA in the nation. So you know that they're going to do it, and you're going to get credit for it with other carriers. So just go in there and make that happen. As far as after you've done that, I want to talk real quick about selecting carriers. And what I recommend to agents is, there's, especially like in our market. So if you're in one of these markets that a lot of carriers look at as, a great opportunity, you're going to notice that there are several carriers that decide every year we get a new carrier that's like, we're big over here in New Jersey, but now we want to come into your market or whatever it is. And it's because there's some markets that are great HMO markets or great PPO markets. And so they want to just jump in there. So you're going to notice that. But what I would encourage you to do is get with your new upline, your FMO, and find out which carriers that they recommend. And typically it's not going to be just getting contracted with all of them. It's not for me. What I find is that there's all this work, and then you got to try to understand 9 or 10 different carriers, and for me it just doesn't make as much sense. If I'm a brand new agent, I'm going to maybe focus on the top 3, maybe 4 carriers in that market, because typically those top 3 or 4 carriers probably do 90% of the business in that market, and everyone else is just kind of getting these small amounts.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I think you got to think about what market are you going to focus in, and then see what plans are available there. And obviously it's going to be something that's foreign to you, and that's where you lean on your FMO and say, look, this is the market that I plan on working. Which carriers do you think would be the most important ones to contract with? Because if you're in a market where there are 13 different carriers available, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to just bombard yourself with having to get contracted with all 13 different carriers, and we're going to jump into this, because you've also got to go and get certified with each carrier that you're going to represent. But the reality is there's usually just a small handful of these carriers that dominate the majority of the market. So you want to have, we will refer to as, we use the term heavy hitters, right? Who are the heavy hitters? And then you can add from there. Well, once you've gotten comfortable and you've gotten 3 or 4 carriers, and you decide, okay, I'm getting more comfortable with this, I want to add more carriers to my portfolio, then you can go ahead and add more carriers.
Yeah. And so the next thing would be, like you mentioned, is getting certified. And so so what is it, like a 3 or 4 hour? Maybe it takes longer.
Some are shorter, some are a little bit longer. But if you're going through this for the first time, I would say, it probably takes anywhere from 2 to 4 hours to complete the certification for each carrier. And so again, you've got the AHIP. That is what your kind of your entry into the rest of the certifications. And then you jump into each carrier that you're going to be contracting with. You've got to go through their certification process. And depending on the carrier, it looks a little bit different for each one of them, but it can be anywhere from 2 to 4 hours, because you've got to be familiar with that carrier and what their model is and what their products look like. So it's an additional certification. So that's why we say you don't want to just jump in and contract with 13 different carriers, because then you're going to spend a whole lot of time just trying to get certified with each one of them, when in reality, you're only going to be using a handful of them for the most part when you're out there writing business.
Hey, real quick. So if you ever do run into a person who, if you run into a person that is a good candidate or really the best option for them is going with that other carrier that you decided not to contract with, can I just go get contracted right now? Probably not.
Yeah, probably not, because
Yeah.
it is a little bit of a process to get that going.
So understand, like we're giving this advice, and you may be out there and you're like, man, this is the perfect plan for such and such person. If you are a person that learns really quick and super smart, then contract with all of them. What we're referring to is there are, for the majority of people out there, they struggle to, this is all brand new. We just talked about it. So I would only go with 4 and just kind of understand that you still got to do what's best for people. So if you're talking with someone and you find out that the best option for them and is going to be a carrier that you're not representing, that's just unfortunate. That's an unfortunate part of this business. What I would do is recommend that they go with that other insurance carrier.
And even at that, I think you can still have a plan in place. So depending on how far out their enrollment period is, because if their enrollment period is a few months out, then you might be able to go and get contracted and certified and be ready to enroll them into that plan with that carrier. But if that's not the case, if that's not the situation, then maybe you go to your upline and say, hey, look, this is the situation. Is there anybody else on our team that might be able to write this piece of business, rather than having them call, the 1-800 number to enroll with that carrier? And then hopefully, that leads to a good relationship with somebody in the team. And if there's ever an opportunity where they can maybe pay you back, then it'll present itself. And again, that's the value in partnering with a regional and a smaller FMO versus if you were to go directly with one of the larger ones.
Yeah, absolutely. And the next step after getting those certifications done, I just want to remind everybody, we just talked about how important training is. You're not done. Like, just after you go through those, I would tell you that you're still not ready. And then this is the part that we run into, is that agents kind of think, okay, I'm good to go. Let me get out there because I'm certified, but there's still so much more to learn. So once you've done that, I would recommend taking advantage of any of that FMO training that you can get. But again, the onus is on you to make sure that you are fully trained. And so what I would encourage people to do also is in addition to what you can learn from your FMO, in addition to what you can learn from everybody else, is listen to podcasts like ours, follow the channels that talk about Medicare, make sure that, get involved in groups, have kind of a community of people that you can talk to. And we're actually starting a Facebook group called Medicare Agent IQ. So feel free to follow us there, jump on there, and be able to have dialogue with other agents where we could talk about, hey, what would I do in this situation? What would I do in that situation? And one thing that I always would tell people is understand that once you've been trained, there's not really a dumb question. A lot of times people feel, they feel embarrassed to put their question in, and maybe because of what I said earlier, I'm like, man, how do you not know that? But usually that is an upline problem. Like usually if someone comes in that's completely green and has no understanding of the Medicare Advantage in general, or Medicare in general, usually that was because of their upline. So it doesn't make you look bad. It makes your upline look bad.
Right. Yeah, but the training's super important because, again, just like you said, you've done the AHIP, you've done the certifications. I'm ready to go, but are you? And the truth is you're not, because you've still got to, understand the basics of Medicare. How does Medicare itself work? And then understanding what Medicare Advantage plans are, and what is Part D, and what are Medicare supplements, and how do all of these kind of work together. You've got to be able to get out there and be able to have these conversations with people. Now, with all that being said, I'm 12 years into this business, right? And there's still times where I have questions. So if there's a term for this, but you don't want to get out there. You don't want to keep yourself from getting out there and getting in front of people because you feel like you don't know everything that there is to know. Because the truth is, you're probably not ever going to know every single thing that there is to know. But once you've got the foundation poured in that basic training, you need to get comfortable with being uncomfortable and getting out there and getting in front of people and forcing yourself into having conversations with them, because sometimes people get scared and they don't want to get out there. Agents don't want to go out there because they don't feel comfortable enough in the training that they've received, or they feel like there's just a whole lot more that they need to learn before they can get out there and get in front of people. Paralysis, there's a term for that. It'll come to me, but it's really
paralysis by analysis.
Is that it? Is that what I'm looking for?
Probably. Sounds something like I've heard before. But yeah, and so after that, after you've been trained, and again, I'm not talking about it's got to be a 6-month training. When I first worked at Humana, they had us go to Louisville, Kentucky for 3 weeks to learn Medicare, and I felt even when I got back from that I still didn't know enough.
Yeah.
But you don't have that luxury of going away for 3 weeks and locking yourself in a room and not in studying and learning this stuff. So you after 3 or 4 days of a 3 or 4 day training, maybe a 2-week training, whatever it is that your upline offers, there's probably going to be times, hopefully, where if you have a good upline, they're going to join you on your first couple of appointments. So that way you feel comfortable. And, some people go with an upline that's a little bit further, and that's perfectly fine, but at least they know, hey, I'm going to be on this appointment. If any questions come up, can I ring you? And so that is how you got to get out there. And then after you've figured this out, you got to talk with your upline and come up with a game plan for what is going to work for you. Some agents, go out and buy leads. Some agents will convert their final expense clients to Medicare sales. Some agents will go out and do grassroots marketing. That's one of the things that we recommend to agents. It works, and that's why we recommend it. And we've seen tons of agents become very successful because they've done grassroots marketing. So you've got to come up with the strategy, come up with the game plan. If you don't have that in your upline that you chose, maybe their strengths were in other things, maybe not so much on the planning. Follow our podcast. That's what we do, is we give people ideas, and not just us. There's other good ones out there. I've seen several that I actually follow in that Medicare Agent IQ follows, because I think they do a great job of getting information out there to agents. And what I would encourage you is that there's not just one that you should follow. Like you can listen and learn. And I always talk about, like, I take pieces from one person and I'm like, oh, I like that, I would use that, and then take pieces of, oh, this guy actually, I like how he says this, or whatever it is, and you take pieces and then you become your own kind of, you get your own style, and usually it becomes from kind of imitation of people that you've seen do it, or conversations that you've seen people have. Do you have anything else on this?
Coming up with a good business plan is super important. You got to look for, what is there any low hanging fruit there for me already, or what are my strengths? And you want to lean into those strengths as you start to build your book of business.
Yeah. The last kind of message that I would send to anyone that's starting, or if you're brand new or you're starting and you're trying to figure this out, is the message is that you are a business owner now. You're not an employee anymore. You are starting your own business, and the idea is that you're going to develop your book, your practice, or whatever you choose to call it. You're going to develop it into an actual business, and so you've got to run it that way. But one of the big parts is you have to understand that there is going to be some investment, and that's part of it. Hopefully your upline is providing you with training or helping you to get in front of people, but ultimately it falls back on you because it's your business. Everyone's here to help you, including the carriers. But it really comes back to you, and you're going to get back from it what you put into it. And so if you go all in and you do that with your time and with your finances, and understand that if you're making commissions, let's say you have a really good month and you make commissions, don't go out and buy something more. Kind of reinvest into your business to be successful, because that's what it takes is kind of reinvesting into your business, and you're going to create something very big. So, do you have anything else?
No, I love that closing message.
Awesome. So until next time, we just really appreciate everyone listening. We hope that you'll continue to follow us and continue to learn. So, and also if you could share this with a friend, we'd really appreciate it. So until next time, thanks so much.